Hi, I'm Shayna with Adventures in Fluff, and today I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on how to sew Katrina's Sew Quick Silker pattern. And I've already put on my blog a step-by-step guide, but I just thought maybe I'd touch upon some of the trickier points and just do a quick rundown of the entire tutorial just so you understand it a little bit better. So what you're going to want to do first is gather all your items, and one of those items would be Katrina's patterns, so just following the link and going on her website and printing out her patterns. And I've already printed these out. I did mine on cardstock just because it's a little bit easier to trace them out, and they stay a little bit nicer if you're planning on doing quite a few of them if you print them out on cardstock. Now, Katrina's pattern is going to come on several different sheets. Your leg band and your waistband and leg bands will come on one sheet. You'll get the top portion of the main portion of the soaker on one sheet, the bottom section of the soaker on another, the top section of the wet zone on another sheet, and then the bottom section of the soaker or the wet zone on another sheet. So what you're going to want to do is look at our sheets, cut out around the pattern line of the designated size that you would like to do your soaker in, and then piece together all the pieces. So I've just pieced together my top portion and my bottom portion and taped it together, and then the same with the main portion of my soaker. I've taped together the top portion and the bottom portion, and I'm doing the size small today, just in case you're wondering. That's what I have cut out here today. As far as the waistband and the leg bands, you would just, I just cut out the whole entire thing. I didn't cut it out to the designated size, but you'll just go down to the size you want. This is the size small up to this line right here, and if you notice, this is actually only half of the waistband. So you have to remember when you're tracing out your pattern that you're going to want this times 2. So you're going to want to trace out one side, move your pattern down, and then trace out the rest of the waistband. Same with your leg bands. This is only going to give you half of a leg band. You're going to need to trace out half, move the pattern down, and then trace out the other half. So just a couple things to remember when tracing out your patterns. As far as material, you can make these with fleece or with wool. These ones today I'm going to be showing you are in fleece. I get mine from just Joann's or Hancock's, and I make sure to get the anti-pill fleece. That way they don't start pilling after 1 or 2 washes. And you can also get a lot more expensive fleece, like a Fuller Tech fleece or something like that, and it'll be a lot thicker and probably work a lot better than your Joann's or Hancock fabric cheaper fleece. When printing out your pattern, you're going to want to take note of the stretch of the fabric. One way is going to be very stretchy, one way is not. You can see how, you can hear how tight it is when you pull on it. You won't get that tight sound when you're pulling on the stretchy side. So certain pieces need to go with the stretch. Your waistband is going to need to go horizontal with the stretch. Your leg bands, same thing. They're going to need to go horizontal with the stretch. This helps them so when you're pulling it up over baby, it's going to have a stretch to it. Your soaker zone, it doesn't really matter. I think it could go either way and be fine. I tend to put mine this way with the stretch, but you can really go either way with the wet zone. Same with my diaper pattern. I tend to put mine this way, but I don't think it matters either quite as much as it does on the waistband and leg bands. I tend to put mine this way, and I have the stretch going this way. So you're just going to want to trace that all out on your material, whether it be fleece or wool. I tend to like to trace mine out on the back of the fabric just because it's a little bit smoother, easier to use my washable fabric marker. And then And the pattern's usually a little bit lighter on the back too, so it's easier to see my washable fabric marker on the back of the fabric. So you're going to trace that all out and then cut out all of your pieces out of the fabric. What you're going to end up with next are all your pieces. So I have 2 leg bands, 1 waistband, 1 main portion, and then I have 1 wet zone. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you is when you are doing the main portion of your diaper, this is actually only half of the main portion of the diaper. When you're tracing it out, you're going to want to trace out this half. Don't mark the line and don't mark the dotted line. Flip it along that line and then trace out the other half of your main portion of the diaper. Then you will end up with this when you cut it all out. First thing you're going to want to do once you've cut out all of your pieces, let's start with the leg bands. You're going to want to fold your leg bands in half. Make sure that the wrong side of the fabric is on either side. Good side of the fabric is on the inside. Line them up, and you can, if you have a serging machine, you can serge this cut edge together. If you just have a sewing machine like myself, I just do a straight stitch, 1/4 inch in, and that's about it on my edge. You could also, if you want it to be a really strong stitch, you could also zigzag it after you straight stitched it. Same thing with your other leg band. You'll fold it in half, serge or straight stitch your end closed. Same with your waistband. You'll fold it in half, wrong sides on the outside, and serge or straight stitch that edge closed. What you're going to end up with are your little waistbands that look like this, and you can see that the edge is straight stitched closed. Both my leg bands are like that, and then I also have my waistband that's also straight stitched closed. Now, sometimes it's a little bit easier for the rest of the tutorial if you kind of clip off some of this extra fabric right here, and it'll just make it, when we need to fold it in half, it'll just make it a little bit easier. So just clipping a little bit close to your straight stitch line, if that's the way that you ended up doing it. If you ended up serging it, then just leave it that way. Or if you zigzag stitched it over it, just leave it that way. But if you straight stitch, you can trim that off a little bit. Now take your main portion of the diaper, lay it on your work surface with the good side of the fabric facing away from you. You want to be looking at the wrong side of the fabric. Take your wet zone, lay it so the good side of the fabric is facing you, and kind of center it on your soaker, both lengthwise and widthwise, centered on the main portion of the diaper soaker. Then what I'm going to do is take my straight pins, and I am going to pin the wet zone to the main portion of my diaper soaker. I just use 4 pins. I pin one at the top, one at the bottom, and one on each side. This seems to hold it enough. If you feel that you need more pins, so be it. And just stick as many pins as you feel like you need in order to keep that fabric in place while you are stitching it. Now what you're going to want to do is, using a double overlock stitch, you're going to want to stitch around the complete perimeter of this wet zone area. Just as close to the edge as you can as possible, although it's not, extremely important, but I like to completely lock in my entire soaker. And if you don't have the double overlock stitch on your sewing machine, don't fret. You could do it with a straight stitch if that's all you have. You could do it with a zigzag stitch. I just happen to think that the double overlock stitch looks the best when you look at it on the outside. So that's what I ended up using on my diaper soakers. So you're going to want to fully stitch up your wet zone. Once you are done with that, you will fold your soaker in half, making sure that you see the inside of the soaker. So you'll see your stitched on wet zone. And what you're going to do now is, using a straight stitch or a serging machine, you're going to stitch the sides of the diaper closed, just this portion right here and over here. So you'll line up these two sides over here. I have a sewing machine, so I just straight stitch mine, 1/4 inch in, and stitch that closed. Go to the other side, line up those sides, and I will straight stitch that closed. If you had a serger, you could serge those closed and it'll be even more secure stitch than if you just straight stitched it. What you're going to end up with after you do that is pretty much your main portion of the diaper will be complete. You'll just turn it right side out, and there's the main portion of your diaper. You can see my stitched on wet zone area using the double overlock stitch, and then how I've closed up the sides of the diaper right there. The top of the diaper is still open and leg holes are still open. That's where our waistband and leg bands come into place. So we will take first our waistband. It'll still be inside out from sewing it. What you're going to want to do is fold it in half. Line up these seams and fold it so it went from 4 inches wide to now 2 inches wide. And you can see the good side of the fabric on the outside. The bad side of the fabric is hiding on the inside that you folded. What you're going to want to do now is rotate it so that the seam is in the center. Center it exactly, and then take some straight pins, and using that seam as your guidance, mark where the front of the soaker is exactly in the center, lined up with the back seam of that waistband. Take another pin, mark exactly where the side of this waistband is. Take another pin, mark exactly where the other side of the waistband is. Now you'll be able to slip this over your diaper soaker, and you want the cut edges lined up with the cut edges of the white waistband lined up with the cut edges of the diaper soaker. Now the reason for the pins are so that I can pin this waistband exactly where it's supposed to go on the diaper soaker. So I will line up the center of the diaper soaker. I know where it is because of you can kind of see on the cutout right here how it has a shape to it. It's got a V right here. So I know that that's going to be the center of the front, and outside V here, I know that's going to be the center of the back. So I didn't mark them on the diaper because I know where they're going to be. So I'll line this up, the front of my waistband up with the front of the soaker, and pin the two together, lining up all the fabrics so they lay right in place. Do the same with the back of the diaper. Line up the waistband with the back of the soaker. Take a pin, and I will pin the two together. Do the same with the sides of the diaper. Line them up. You'll know it's the side of the soaker because it has the seam on it, and then I have placed a pin on the side of the waistband. So I will pin the two together, and I will do the same with the other side. And I will just line the two up, lining up where that pin was on the waistband, and I will pin it to the side, lining it up with the seam on the diaper soaker. Okay, so I now have that all pinned on. Now what you're going to want to do is use a straight stretch stitch. If you don't have a straight stretch stitch, you can just use a regular straight stitch, but the stretch stitch will give you a little bit more give and it'll make it a little bit stronger. So you'll want to use the straight stretch stitch if you have it, and you're just going to sew a 1/4 inch in around the whole top of the diaper. Now you'll notice, looking at it, that the diaper soaker is larger than the waistband. That's because you want the waist to go tight around your baby's waist, and then the diaper soaker is larger to encompass your cloth diaper. So what you're going to need to do in order to line this up is, while you are sewing, you are going to need to stretch this waistband as you are sewing. Try not to stretch the actual diaper because you don't want it to stretch. You just want the waistband to stretch to evenly distribute around the diaper cover. And you'll know that you've hit the right points if you are not having a pucker when you end up at your next pin point. So the goal is to get this part all straight, hit the pin, take that pin out, then start stretching again. Stretch it out, stitch, hit the pin, should be all nice and clean, and then you'll remove this pin and then move on to the next section. And if you've stretched it enough, you shouldn't end up with a pucker at the end of your sewing. Now you're going to do the same thing with your leg holes. You're just going to take them and fold them in upon themselves, so they will go from 2 inches to 1 inch wide. Line up the little seams, and then this time you're just going to mark 1 point on them. You'll have your seam on one side, we'll mark the opposite side. Now this one I like to sew on with the diaper inside out. It just seems to be a little bit easier than doing it the way that we did the waistband. So I will turn it inside out, stick my little leg band inside the leg hole, line up my seamed side with the seamed side on the diaper soaker. So you can see that this is the seam, line up the little seam here on the leg band with that one. Now I will line up my pin that I put on the opposite side of the leg band, and I'm going to line that up with the bottom, the exact bottom of the soaker diaper. So right where it would fold in right there, I will line those up. And then I'm just going to pin them together, lining up all the seams. And then you can do the same with the seam side, just pin them together. Making sure to line up all your fabrics so it looks nice and straight. Now you're just going to do the same thing that you did with the waistband, only now the band is on the inside instead of the outside. And I'm going to sew a straight stitch around the entire leg band, and I'm going to make sure to stretch that leg band as I'm going to make sure that I evenly distribute the leg band so it takes up the whole entire section of the leg hole, because the leg hole is going to be bigger than this leg band. And just go slow, because you want to make sure that you get all the fabrics lined up as you're going. So just when it comes to the leg bands, they're a little bit tricky, and I would just say take it slow. Once you're finished with that leg band, repeat the process and do your other leg band, and then you are done. Now what you're going to end up with, let's just turn this back inside out. So this is kind of what it would look like after you're done sewing it. It'll be inside out, waistband in, leg holes in, turn it right side out, and now you will just flip up your waistband and you will have your completed soaker. So congratulations. hopefully your soaker came out good. I know that it took me until my third one, I think, to get it all evenly distributed on these little leg bands. These little leg bands are kind of tricky because they're so small. But believe me, after, you know, one or two, then you'll get the hang of the stretch. And I'll just show you, this is one of them that I've done. This is a size small. I've done 2 of the newborn sizes. And then I've also done one in the wool. And I just used a sweater that I got from Goodwill and upcycled it to make a wool soaker. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and I hope it helps you out in understanding the directions a little bit better. And be sure to post any pictures of your soakers on my Facebook page, and I'd just love to see them. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you join me again on another one of my adventures in fluff.